The world of country music lost more than a voice when Kenny Rogers passed away in March 2020. It lost a legend, a storyteller, a man whose gravelly yet comforting tone became a soundtrack to love, heartbreak, redemption, and human connection. For decades, songs like The Gambler, Lucille, and Islands in the Stream echoed through radio waves, stadiums, and hearts alike. But while fans grieved a legend, behind the curtain of stardom stood a woman quietly holding together the shattered pieces of a world she once shared with him. That woman was Wanda Rogers, his wife of nearly 23 years, the mother of his youngest children, and the keeper of his quietest secrets and his most intimate truths. For 5 long years, Wanda chose silence. She avoided interviews. She turned down memoir opportunities. She walked through her grief privately. But in 2025, on the 5th anniversary of Kenny's passing, Wanda did something she had not done since that harrowing day. She spoke. What followed was not only a tribute to her husband but a heartbreaking, soul-bearing account of love, loss, and resilience. This is their story. Born on August 21, 1938, in Houston, Texas, Kenneth Ray Rogers grew up in a working-class family. One of 8 children, Kenny learned early the value of perseverance. His early musical pursuits started with doo-wop and jazz but found their true home in country pop crossover hits that brought him international acclaim. By the 1970s and 80s, Rogers had become a household name. He scored over 24 No. 1 hits, won multiple Grammys, and sold over 100 million records worldwide. His voice, warm, worn, and wise, became a comfort to generations. But beyond his music, Kenny was a businessman, a photographer, and a family man. He married 5 times, but it was his final marriage, to Wanda Miller, that brought him lasting peace. Kenny Rogers met Wanda Miller in 1993 at a restaurant in Atlanta, where she was working as a hostess. The age gap, 26 years, raised eyebrows. Kenny was 54. Wanda was just 28. Yet the spark between them was undeniable. Despite public scrutiny and familial hesitation, especially from Wanda's conservative parents, the couple pursued their relationship. Kenny took time to win over Wanda's family, even flying to her hometown in Georgia to assure them of his intentions. In 1997, they married in a private ceremony. They later welcomed twin sons, Jordan and Justin, in 2004. At the time, Kenny was 66. The birth of the twins gave him a second chance at fatherhood and a deeper sense of purpose. He often called Wanda the anchor of his later years and said their relationship was the greatest joy of his life. In his final years, Kenny's health began to visibly deteriorate. After years on the road and under the spotlight, his body began to fail him. In 2018, he canceled the remainder of his farewell tour due to health challenges. Fans were heartbroken but understanding. Behind the scenes, Wanda had become his full-time caregiver. She helped him through hospital visits, physical therapy, and moments of crushing fatigue. He was eventually diagnosed with bladder cancer, though the family kept this private for as long as they could. Even as Kenny's condition worsened, he never let go of his humor or his gratitude. Wanda later revealed that one of his last full conversations included the words, "I've lived a good life. Don't cry for me too long." Kenny Rogers died peacefully at home, surrounded by family, on March 20, 2020, at the age of 81. The news was confirmed in a statement by his publicist. Rogers passed away peacefully at home from natural causes under the care of hospice and surrounded by his family. But the timing was devastating. The COVID-19 pandemic was in its early global stages. Lockdowns were happening across the United States. Travel was restricted. Public gatherings were banned. There would be no traditional funeral, no memorial with fans. Instead, a small private ceremony took place, attended only by family. Wanda was devastated, not just by the loss of her husband, but by the solitude in which she had to grieve. The pandemic stripped her of the comfort of shared mourning. Her twin sons, only 15 at the time, struggled to comprehend the loss of their father while locked away from the world. In a rare moment of visibility, Wanda issued a brief statement thanking fans for their support. Then she disappeared from the public eye, for 5 years. In the days following Kenny Rogers' death, fans from across the globe poured out messages of love, condolences, and memories. Country stars and entertainers, from Dolly Parton to Reba McEntire, posted tributes. But one voice was notably absent, Wanda Rogers. Wanda had never craved the spotlight. Even during Kenny's fame, she preferred to stay in the background, offering quiet support rather than media soundbites. But now, the silence took on a deeper tone. It became a cocoon of grief. She retreated to the family's home in Sandy Springs, Georgia. Close friends noted how she shut off the outside world. Her focus narrowed to her 2 teenage sons, Jordan and Justin, who were just beginning to understand the magnitude of their loss. Wanda didn't attend high-profile memorials or sit for interviews. She avoided calls from networks and declined magazine offers. One publishing house even approached her for a memoir with a six-figure advance. She turned it down. In private, the grief was unbearable. Kenny was not just her husband, he was her best friend, her protector, and her partner in everything. Wanda later admitted, "I didn't just lose my husband, I lost my rhythm. My sense of normal. I had to relearn how to breathe without him." She kept Kenny's belongings just as they were. His reading glasses on the nightstand. His favorite records still by the turntable. His cowboy boots, polished and waiting by the door. And still, she didn't speak. Not to the press. Not to fans. She mourned in silence. To the outside world, Wanda Rogers' silence was puzzling. Why had she, the wife of one of the most beloved musicians in American history, chosen not to publicly honor his memory? The answer, as she later revealed, was layered in heartbreak and emotional survival. "I couldn't speak," she admitted in her first interview 5 years later. "Not because I didn't want to, but because I physically could not." Grief had paralyzed her. She said that in the weeks after Kenny's death, her voice would literally tremble when she tried to speak about him. The mere mention of his name would bring her to tears. And more than anything, she felt overwhelmed by the pressure to say something meaningful, to give words to a loss so deep it defied language. "It felt like the world wanted me to make sense of something I couldn't make sense of myself," she explained. She also feared that speaking too soon might reduce her experience to a soundbite. In a world obsessed with instant reactions, she didn't want her grief to become trending news for a day, only to be forgotten the next. Another reason for her silence was deeply maternal. Wanda was fiercely protective of her sons, who were thrust into young adulthood by the death of their father. Shielding them from public scrutiny became her top priority. The media attention surrounding Kenny's death only added pressure to an already fractured household. Wanda believed that staying quiet was the only way to offer her children stability. "I didn't want them to be raised in the shadow of loss," she later said. "I wanted them to grow into their own strength before the world came knocking." And so, year after year, she chose silence. Not because she didn't care, but because it was the only way she knew how to honor Kenny with dignity. The decision to finally speak came unexpectedly, on what would have been Kenny Rogers' 86th birthday in August 2024. Wanda had just finished preparing a small family dinner in his memory when she wandered into Kenny's old music room. The walls still held his platinum records, and his guitar leaned gently in its stand, untouched since he passed. On the shelf sat a journal Kenny had started writing during his final year. It wasn't filled with songs or memoir entries, it was filled with letters. Letters to Wanda. Letters to their sons. Letters about life, love, regret, gratitude. One line in particular changed everything. "I hope when the time comes you'll share our story, not for me, but for the ones who are still finding their way." That night, Wanda cried harder than she had in years. Not because of sadness alone, but because she finally felt Kenny's permission, perhaps even his request, to open up. She decided to break her silence. Not in a tell-all book. Not on a sensational television special. But on her own terms. She reached out to People magazine, the only media outlet Kenny ever trusted during their marriage. She said, "If I'm going to speak, it needs to come from a place of peace, not performance." She also involved her sons, who were now 20 years old. With their blessing, she sat down for a candid and heartfelt conversation. It was time. In March 2025, 5 years after Kenny Rogers' death, Wanda Rogers released her first full public statement. It appeared in People magazine, accompanied by a modest photo of Wanda in Kenny's favorite chair, holding one of his guitars. Here is an excerpt from her moving message. "It's taken me 5 years to find the courage to speak. Not because my love for Kenny faded, but because it has stayed so overwhelmingly strong that I didn't know how to carry it out loud. Kenny was more than my husband. He was my calm. He was the reason I smiled when things got hard. The day he left this world, something inside me changed forever. But he also left me with something beautiful. Memories that still bloom every morning, and the strength to move forward for our boys. Jordan and Justin remind me so much of their father. In their kindness. In their curiosity. In their humor. I want to thank the fans who stood by us in silence, just like I did. You allowed me the space to grieve privately, and I will forever be grateful for that. To those who loved Kenny, thank you for loving the man behind the music. He loved you back deeply." The response was immediate and emotional. Fans flooded social media with messages of support, love, and admiration. Radio stations replayed his greatest hits in tribute. Fellow musicians shared memories of Kenny's mentorship and warmth. But more than anything, Wanda's message reopened a conversation about grief, how it looks different for everyone, and how silence can be an act of strength, not weakness. Her honesty touched a nerve, especially among widows, caregivers, and families who had faced similar losses during the pandemic years. Wanda's interview was followed by a short televised tribute called Remembering Kenny Rogers, a family story, aired on CMT, featuring never-before-seen home videos, private photos, and Wanda's personal narration of life with Kenny. For the first time, Wanda wasn't just Kenny Rogers' wife, she was his voice in the world he left behind. Behind the stage lights and the roaring applause, Kenny Rogers lived a very different life with Wanda and their twin boys. Their home in Sandy Springs, Georgia, wasn't a palace. It was a warm, grounded place filled with laughter, guitars in every room, and the scent of Southern cooking. Wanda and Kenny lived deliberately. After Kenny's retirement from touring in 2017, they committed to family dinners, long talks on the porch, and quiet Sunday mornings. Kenny often said, "I've lived life in the fast lane for too long. Now, I'm enjoying the dirt road with Wanda." Their sons, Jordan and Justin, were the heart of that home. Kenny had raised children from previous marriages, but these twins arrived late in his life and offered him a second chance. He was determined to be present, helping with homework, teaching them guitar, and sharing bedtime stories that turned into life lessons. Wanda described how Kenny had a ritual each morning. He'd make coffee, feed the dogs, and leave a handwritten note somewhere for her. Sometimes it was just a joke. Sometimes it was poetry. And often, it was a simple "I love you." As his health declined, their private moments became even more sacred. Wanda revealed in her 2025 interview that Kenny had spoken openly about death in his final months. "He wasn't afraid. He wasn't bitter or angry," she said. "He just wanted to make sure I'd be okay." In his final hours, Kenny's last words to Wanda were, "You made my life feel like a song worth singing. Promise me you'll keep singing, even without me." Wanda promised. But she admitted it took her 5 years to even hum again. Kenny Rogers had 5 children from different chapters of his life: Carol, Kenny Jr., Christopher, and twins Jordan and Justin with Wanda. Each child had a unique relationship with their father. Kenny once said, "I wasn't the best father early on. Fame got in the way. But later in life, I tried to do better." Carol, his oldest, was raised by her mother and had limited contact with Kenny during his rise to fame. They later reconnected, and by the end of his life, she had found peace with their complicated past. Kenny Jr., his son from his third marriage, followed a quieter life and kept out of the limelight. He was present during Kenny's final days and supported Wanda's decision to keep things private. Christopher, his son with Marianne Gordon, had a deep musical bond with Kenny. Though they lived separately, their relationship was full of mutual respect and affection. But it was the twins, Jordan and Justin, who shared Kenny's later, more intimate years. They saw him not just as a legend, but as Dad, the man who made pancakes, helped them build treehouses, and cried during Pixar movies. Wanda described a touching moment during Kenny's final week when he asked all 5 of his children to come together. He wanted them to know he loved them equally. He asked for forgiveness from those he felt he had failed. It was one of the most powerful things I've ever witnessed. Though grief hit each child differently, Wanda maintained a strong connection with all of them after his death. They supported her silence, respected her grief, and joined her quietly in honoring Kenny's memory. Faith wasn't something Kenny Rogers talked about in interviews often, but those close to him knew that his relationship with God was personal and deeply held. Raised in a devout Baptist family in Houston, Kenny often sang in church choirs before he found stardom. He drifted from organized religion during his years in show business but never lost his spiritual compass. In his later years, especially after retiring, Kenny returned to his roots. He read scripture daily, listened to gospel music, and talked frequently with Wanda about the meaning of life and what came after. Wanda said that Kenny's faith gave him peace in the face of death. He didn't fear it. He believed we're all just passing through, she recalled. He talked about heaven not as a place above, but as a place beside, the people we love, the memories we carry. During his final year, he spent many evenings listening to his favorite hymns, often singing them softly while holding Wanda's hand. His favorite was Amazing Grace, which Wanda later played during his private memorial. Kenny also asked for one thing in particular, not to be remembered only for The Gambler or Lucille, but for how he treated people when the cameras were off. Songs fade, but kindness echoes forever, he once told Wanda. After his death, Wanda donated part of Kenny's estate to Christian-based charities, including St. Jude Children's Hospital and a local Georgia church that provided meals for the homeless. His Bible still sits on the bedside table where he left it, marked on Psalm 23. After losing Kenny, Wanda's grief was interwoven with the pressure of being a single parent to 2 teenage boys. At 15, Jordan and Justin were just beginning to understand the world, and now they had to face it without their father. Wanda didn't have time to collapse. She had to be present, for them, and because of them. There were days I wanted to stay in bed forever, she admitted. But I looked at their faces, and I remembered what Kenny would have done. She sought counseling not just for herself, but for her sons as well. Grief counseling became a family ritual, helping the twins open up about their emotions, their fears, and their unanswered questions. Wanda said that Kenny's name was always part of the conversation. We didn't avoid talking about him. We celebrated him. Despite her grief, Wanda focused on creating a home full of structure, routine, and love. She cooked Kenny's favorite meals for the boys: southern fried chicken, cornbread, and sweet tea. She played his music on Saturdays. And she encouraged her sons to follow their passions. One of the twins, Jordan, took to the guitar like his father. Justin pursued photography, another passion Kenny had cultivated later in life. Wanda allowed them to choose how public they wanted to be about their father's legacy. She never pushed them into the spotlight. Instead, she gave them space to grieve and grow privately. In 2023, Jordan played an acoustic version of You Decorated My Life at a small school event. It was the first time Kenny's song had been performed publicly by one of his children. Wanda wept through the entire song, knowing that Kenny would have been proud. Every day, I parent through the lens of what Kenny taught me: love them fiercely. Be present. Listen more than you speak. Wanda's strength didn't come from having all the answers, it came from her unwavering love. Kenny Rogers passed away on March 20, 2020, at the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, a time when fear, uncertainty, and strict restrictions gripped the world. While his death was from natural causes, the pandemic's timing changed everything about how his family grieved, how fans mourned, and how the world remembered him. Wanda had hoped to give Kenny a proper farewell, one fitting for a man of his stature. Friends and fans from across the globe would have gathered, music legends would have performed, and tributes would have filled arenas. Instead, the virus made all that impossible. Hospitals were limiting visits, media crews were grounded, and even funerals were tightly regulated. Kenny passed away at home under hospice care, with Wanda and their sons by his side, but there were no extended family members, no final visits from longtime friends like Dolly Parton, and no in-person public memorial. It was so cruel, Wanda later said. He gave the world so much, but when it was time for the world to give back, to say goodbye, it just couldn't. Wanda made the heartbreaking decision to hold a private service, attended only by immediate family. She said goodbye to Kenny in a small chapel near their home. The service featured his favorite songs, including Sweet Music Man and Love Will Turn You Around. There were no paparazzi, no cameras, just quiet weeping, silent prayers, and a profound emptiness. The pandemic not only isolated the grieving process, it delayed the healing. It wasn't until 2022, 2 years after his death, that a virtual tribute event was organized with participation from artists like Lionel Richie, Reba McEntire, and Brad Paisley. Even then, Wanda declined to appear. "I wasn't ready," she said. And Kenny would have understood that. Though Wanda stayed silent for 5 years, she kept track of every tribute. Late at night, when the house was quiet and her boys were asleep, she would sit in Kenny's old armchair and scroll through social media posts, videos, and fan letters. The tributes poured in by the thousands, from celebrities, fans, and even people who had met Kenny just once in passing. Each one was a thread in the tapestry of his legacy. But some tributes moved Wanda beyond words. One that stood out was Dolly Parton's tearful video posted just hours after Kenny's passing. Clutching her guitar, Dolly said, "You never know how much you love somebody until they're gone. Kenny, I will always love you." Wanda watched that clip dozens of times. She later said, "It felt like Dolly was speaking for all of us." Another unforgettable tribute came from Lionel Richie, who credited Kenny for helping him cross over from R&B to country. At a 2021 Music Awards show, Lionel performed Lady, the song he wrote for Kenny, in an emotional acoustic set. He ended with the words, "This one's for the man who believed in me before the world did." But it wasn't just the stars. Wanda was deeply touched by simple letters from fans who shared how Kenny's music helped them through divorces, cancer battles, war deployments, and family losses. One fan from Michigan wrote, "I played through the years at my parents' 50th wedding anniversary. Then again, at my mom's funeral. Kenny gave me music for every chapter of my life." Wanda later created a scrapbook filled with printed letters, photos, and song lyrics. She called it The World's Goodbye. It became her companion during sleepless nights. Today, 5 years after Kenny's death, Wanda Rogers lives a quiet but intentional life. At 58, she has emerged from the shadows of grief, not untouched, but but undeniably stronger. She still lives in the same home she shared with Kenny. It's been updated in parts, but his essence remains everywhere, from the photos on the hallway walls to his acoustic guitar by the fireplace. Every morning, she still brews coffee in his favorite mug. Wanda spends much of her time raising awareness about grief and mental health, especially among women who lose partners later in life. In 2024, she quietly launched a non-profit project called Still Standing, which offers counseling scholarships and online support groups for widows and grieving parents. "Loss can isolate you," she said in her interview. "But I want people to know they're not alone." Her sons, now 20, are pursuing college and creative careers. Jordan is studying music at Belmont University in Nashville, and Justin is interning at a media production company in Atlanta. They both live nearby, and the trio remains tightly knit. Though Wanda has not remarried and says she doesn't plan to, she has opened her heart to friendship and healing. She frequently meets with other widows, hosts intimate music nights at home, and occasionally visits Nashville for charity events. In 2025, for the first time, she attended the Country Music Hall of Fame ceremony, where a permanent Kenny Rogers exhibit was unveiled. Wanda cut the ribbon herself, tears in her eyes. "I don't see this as closing a chapter," she said. "I see it as keeping the pages open, for everyone who still hears his voice when they need it most." When asked what she most wants the world to remember about Kenny Rogers, Wanda didn't hesitate. That he was more than the songs.
He was kind. He was humble. He was human.
She shared how Kenny would often stop in random diners, chat with janitors, and take extra time for fans who reminded him of his own humble beginnings. "He never believed he was better than anyone else," she said. "He'd say, 'I just got lucky enough to be heard.'" Wanda also wants the world to remember that Kenny's songs were rooted in truth. Whether singing about heartbreak in Lucille or life's wisdom in The Gambler, he was channeling real experiences. He once told Wanda, "People think I write songs. But really, I write confessions." Most importantly, she wants people to know that Kenny loved being a husband and a father more than being a star. He'd say, "I've had a #1 hit. I've had sold-out tours. But nothing compares to a kiss from you or a hug from the boys." She encourages fans to keep playing his music, not just for nostalgia, but for healing. His voice has a way of showing up when you need it. That's not coincidence. That's Kenny. Wanda plans to one day write a book, not a tell-all, but a memoir of love and resilience. But for now, she is content to let Kenny's voice, his lyrics, and her silence speak for themselves. Thank you for watching this heartfelt tribute to the life and legacy of Kenny Rogers, and the powerful silence broken by his beloved wife, Wanda Rogers. If this story moved you, please consider giving this video a like to help keep Kenny's memory alive. Feel free to share your thoughts or your favorite Kenny Rogers song in the comments below. We'd love to hear how his music touched your life. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more videos and tributes to the legends we've loved and lost. Turn on notifications so you never miss a story that deserves to be remembered. Some voices never fade, they live on through love, music, and memory.